Try typing with your thumbs.
It's called a Blackberry.
Welcome to Maple Syrup for Your Eyes, Volume 9. I'm Richard Krause. I have a super interesting show for you today, but we have to do some setup, or should I say startup, before I let it rip. Do you remember that sound? That was the Blackberry startup from the Blackberry Torch 9800. It's hard to remember now, but there was a time when we were not tethered to our smartphones. The movie Blackberry, starring Jay Baruchel and Matt Johnson, and now available wherever you legally download and buy movies, vividly recreates the scrappy story of friendship, betrayal, and hubris that began our obsession with our phones. Today, we're going to focus on the Blackberry story.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
Okay, picture a cell phone and an email machine all in one thing. There is a free wireless internet signal all across North America, and nobody has figured out how to use it. It's like the Force. Sorry, have you seen Star Wars?
No.
That guy is sketchy.
I don't think it's sketchy.
The guy's a shark.
I know how to market it, and I know who we can sell it to. But I want 50% of the company, and I've got to be CEO.
I don't know who you think you are, but deal.
There was a time when the Canadian-made odd little phone with the QWERTY keyboard, encrypted messaging, and low data cost was a status symbol used by some of the world's most powerful people. In the hands of everyone from President Barack Obama and Justin Timberlake to Katy Perry and Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour, the phones helped the world communicate in a whole new way. They were the original smartphones, which makes their Canadian creators, Mike Lazardardis and Doug Freegan, visionaries, the men who gave us the future. I sat down with Blackberry co-creator, co-star, and director Matt Johnson and Jay Baruchel, who plays the awkward genius behind the Blackberry tech, Mike Lazardidis. Matt is the director of The Dirties, which won Best Narrative Feature at the Slamdance Film Festival, Operation Avalanche, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and the mockumentary television series Nirvana, The Band, The Show. You know Jay from his voice role as Hiccup Haddock in How to Train Your Dragon, and for roles in Knocked Up, Tropic Thunder, The Trotsky, Fanboy, She's Out of My League, Goon, This Is the End, and the action fantasy film The Sorcerer's Apprentice. You can also see him as the host of We're All Gonna Die, even Jay Baruchel on Crave. But Blackberry isn't just a business story or the story of innovation. Instead, it's an underdog tale that emphasizes the human foibles that led to Research in Motion's downfall, and not just the financial ones. We began the interview with the idea of talking about the film, which was what we were all there for, but were soon sidetracked by a discussion inspired by the lessons learned from the film, about what it means to be Canadian, why we don't celebrate our own stories, and much, much more. Stay tuned. It often doesn't sound like an interview as much as it does a conversation that we might have had over a drink or two. Like the movie we were supposed to concentrate on before the conversation took a few left turns, the interview is passionate, patriotic, funny, and not quite what you would expect. Here's Matt Johnson and Jay Baruchel of Blackberry. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, man.
I would take it very personally if you didn't talk to us.
Well, they showed us the movie on Monday, and it's great.
Oh, wicked. Thank you.
Yeah, the movie's great. And I'll tell you, I wasn't expecting to get caught up in the anxiety of it as much as I did. The opening hour, every time an easel fell down, every time Mike, Jay's character, was lost for words or went back into his head, it just made me so anxious, because this is this creation you're about. You don't know it yet, but you're about to change the world, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And the movie does a really great job, I think, of just keeping you on that precipice. Where in that first hour, man, I was almost like, I don't know how much more of this I can take right away.
It's when you go to watch this movie, you don't expect that one of the major vibes is going to be like Battle of Algiers, right? And like that's like and I find that's like that is a spirit in our movie. I think it's like far more tense and suspenseful than you'd think it would be.
Yeah, and so tell me, Matt, then, you co-wrote this, you're in it, you directed it. Tell me about connecting with this story. How did start right at the very beginning, I guess? How did you sign up to do this?
Well, originally it was just read this book. Do you think there's a movie here? But what connected me to it, and you may be interested in this, is that I kind of saw the spirit of young business entrepreneurship, like very first project, a bunch of guys in a room trying to do something interesting, as very similar to what my life was like as a filmmaker.
I was going to ask you about this, right? Because you've got this amazing, in the movie, this amazing collaboration happening. There's a lot of people playing just outside the lines a little bit, you know, and breaking the rules, but with a really clear kind of idea of what they wanted to do. And I thought there's got to be a parallel there somewhere.
It was the only reason I decided to make the film, was because I thought, here's a way that I can exercise some of my past as a filmmaker and deal with the issues that I still hadn't dealt with psychologically, about having even a minor success and how that changes friendships and changes your life. And specifically, how far are you willing to compromise on your own morals in order to do what you think is the right thing, and how you can be wrong about that? And I think I see these three characters, Doug, Mike, and Jim, as a kind of essential piece of my own psychology, because I don't think any one of them are wrong. I think each of them are right in their own way, but they're not all the way right. And so this was my way of wrestling with that as a filmmaker, because I too am a perfectionist, very ambitious, but also want to have fun. And keeping those in balance is, I think, the secret to a healthy life.
But do you think, though, you say that they're not wrong. No one's completely all the way wrong. But, man, it's got to be hubris. It's got to be ego. Is there lots of stuff. Ambition came and dragged them down a little bit, I would think.
Oh,
right?
big time. I mean, look, the fact is, I think there's a Pygmalion reference here where Mike J's character fell in love with the statue he sculpted. I think he falls in love with his own creation to the point where he's not able to admit that anything could ever be better.
And sorry,
no, but yeah, absolutely, you see that, and you see that through a couple of ways that are subtle and great. So Jay's character Mike goes through so much of a change during this film, and it happens kind of gradually, but then you see it. All of a sudden, you're wearing suits. All of a sudden, your head's held a little higher. All of a sudden, your body language changes, and you're taking charge in meetings. And when you guys gather together to watch Steve Jobs unveil the iPhone. He's like, yeah, this is ridiculous. This will never fly.
Oh, right.
Yeah. To me, it's like, in addition to the sort of story of kind of friendship and this band of brothers, kind of lost boys setting out to kind of put the world to rights stuff, I also think there's a kind of a larger kind of truth contained within it, which is like, what happens at the clash of kind of like good faith Canadian entrepreneurship is when it's faced with laissez-faire capitalism. It's almost like we start on a hill, right? And gravity is pulling us down towards this sort of lowest common denominator that will inevitably end in sort of mass production and all of these things, you know, and just and mediocrity and planned obsolescence, and you know that is the only place a business can possibly go. And so it seems like you watch these guys having this kind of fight to maintain. It is a fight to maintain soul and consciousness.
And product quality.
And product quality.
Literally, let's not make this in China.
Yes.
Let's not sell it to too many people. Because then there won't be enough bandwidth, all that kind of stuff.
They're trying to keep it local and small.
Yeah.
But the brain drain, it's the same truth. It's the same unstoppable force that is pulling our brightest, strongest elements out of our culture, and has done for for the entirety of our existence. It's almost like it strips us of our nutrients. And so this is a story of like this Canadian vitamin that's probably going to be good for the world, and no matter what is going to get stripped by this giant, what do you call it? Slurry.
Yeah.
Slurry of American greed.
Well, interesting to hear both of you talk about this in this way, because both of you seem like you fought against that. So The Dirties comes out, it's a big hit. There's, I'm reading about you in the Globe and Mail. You're everywhere. You're making inflammatory comments that are getting you lots of publicity.
The good old days.
Oh, the good old days. But you're probably, though, at that point also like getting offers to do stuff that would destroy you in your soul, but plump up your bank account a little bit.
Well, certainly the pressure that I saw this film facing that I identified with most was that of changing who you are in order to fit into a larger system. And after The Dirties was made, the pressure that was put on me to just move to the United States on its own was so massive that I was seen as a fool not to do it. Like I was seen as a fool. And I don't know what the right decision was, right? I mean, maybe I should have done this.
Well, Blackberry suggests that you're on the right path.
Yeah. Well, but it's because I didn't want to have to, at least at this not at this point in my life, I didn't want to have to do what Mike had to do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the choice that Mike had to make in this film was so painful for him, but he was put into a corner and thought, well, this is all I can do, and I'm trying my best to avoid that because I love it here.
Yeah. Well, Jay, I've known you for a long time, and ever since I've known you, and we've been doing this together. We've hosted Q&As. We've done all this stuff, and you've always done what you wanted to do. It feels to me, anyway, that you have tried anyway to do exactly the thing that you wanted to do and fight against all of that other stuff.
Yeah, arguably to my detriment sometimes. But again, I didn't have a choice. So it's like, we all have choices, but what I mean is my kind of I don't want to say my beliefs. I don't want to get all hoity-toity and imply a sort of moral distinction, but my wiring wouldn't allow me to do the other thing. Yep. And I see there's this my publicist Lewis is standing there, and there is this one year about 10, 12, 15 years ago where I had 5 movies come out in one year.
I remember it well.
And it was like, okay, we're going to get you stylist and you're going to go for the brass ring, right? And when I look at photos of myself, I look at photos of myself from the Tropic Thunder premiere, and I look like and I remember I had this moment a few weeks ago. This photo came up in my life, and I was like, God, I look terrible. And I remember, why do I look terrible? I was like, I remember because I didn't want to put effort in. Because to put effort in would mean to care about that. It was a machine I didn't want to interact with. And so you see me in these, one, if they were to go down this rabbit hole, would see me in interviews and on red carpets, and it looks like I'm trying to get myself fired or kicked off this machine called stardom in Hollywood. I did everything in my power to self-sabotage myself, and I realized only years later what that was. It was I couldn't stomach it. I tried. I remember having a conversation with my agent being like, well, if I'm here, I might as well go for it. And I want to read whatever Gyllenhaal's reading, and I'll act circles around him. Just give me a shot, right? This competitive side of me, but I didn't actually want it. And I remember getting ready to do the She's Out of My League press tour with that fella right there, and it was lovely hanging out with him. But I remember the week or two before that, I felt myself going on this roller coaster, and I couldn't get off, and I didn't have to be there.
Right.
I chose to be there, and so I just was like, for me, it's like and also when I started to kind of. Write and direct, which is closer to my heart, and so that's the other thing. I was also doing it for a thing that wasn't my raison d'etre, which makes it even harder. And so when I started to kind of create and write and direct stuff, it was clear to me that I would want to make stuff here for a bunch of reasons, but kind of the most important one is if I make stuff down there, I might have sometimes a more direct shot at it reaching a wider audience, potentially, very potentially. It's very conditional, this stuff. People always act like it's easier one place or the other. It's also conditional, right? So, but I could potentially have a direct line to people, a bunch of people seeing my but at the end of the day, what will I have contributed to? I will have been one other sort of Canadian dropped into this vat of Western culture, of American culture, and And I will have left. What will I have left behind? I will have contributed to another culture, and a culture that doesn't need me to contribute to it. It's fine. It's healthy. It's got enough people creating in it. I want to know that in 200 years, if there's no such thing as Canada, I want to know that movies or literature were left behind. That I was part of that I added one strand to this tapestry of a country that my granddad left his family in '39 and fought 5 years to protect. You know, I believe in Canada. I want to participate in Canada. It just so happens I have the curse of liking movies. And so he and I are in the same boat in that respect. But I also, if I can, for a second, let me digress real quick, which is there is a really toxic kind of school of thought up here that says that, it's easier to get made in the States because all they care about is making stuff. They don't have to answer to as many sort of masters as we do or something like that. And I just want to tell anybody that subscribes to this fallacy, there are 100 times as many people down there.
Yeah.
Okay? There are 100 times as many producers and there are 100 times as many people telling you they can fund a thing, right?
You never have a bad meeting down there.
No such thing.
You walk out of
no
every
such
meeting
thing
in America.
Every meeting is positive in the States.
Yeah.
It's sold, yeah.
And by the way, that money goes away like that. Somebody can promise you $1 million, it disappears within a week. I'll tell you that up here, when that money is given to you, it's given to you because it's from the government and it's protected, and they want to foster our culture. So, go wherever you want to go, but don't kid yourself into thinking that it's harder here than elsewhere. Mm-hmm. It is inherently hard because we picked the most expensive medium in the history of art to create in, right? The movie you saw cost somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? What's the most expensive production cost of a painting? Like, what's the best paint, best easel, best, all that? Couple thousand?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Biggest movie costs hundreds of thousands. It's not easy to make a movie anywhere, right? But when it picks you, that's it.
Yeah, well said. It's completely true. And this idea that this is one of the few art forms that to practice costs hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars at the minimum.
Yeah, you don't get to practice it on your own,
Yeah.
Which makes it a pretty rarefied job.
Correct. And then when it's time to go, you just go, because you might never get to go again because people don't just spend that money every day.
It's a sad reality.
I always think whatever project that I'm doing, and books mostly for me, that it's going to be my last one.
Yeah, of course.
It always feels to me like it's always going to be. That's
it's going to get taken away.
Yeah.
You know what? For some reason, my producer Matt Miller says this exact same thing. He wants to take every deal. He's like, let's just agree. Let's just take it. And I guess I must be brain damaged in some way because I'm always like, we're going to get all kinds of opportunities. Let's just say no. Let's just say no. And I think that creates a healthy balance. Both, again, almost like the three characters in Blackberry. Like, I think you need both psychologies active at the same time. I will never work again, and I have the rest of my life to do whatever I want.
He's absolutely right, because the minute that you need them more than they need you, you're
Yes.
Right? And so the samurai that ceases to fear death becomes invincible, right? And so you've just it's Dustin Hoffman in the making of what's the Runaway Jury? In the making of Runaway Jury, the first time him and Hackman worked together, and they do an interview in the making of where he says, to this day, every time a job ends, I think it's the last time I'll ever get hired. So that is just inherent in freelance art as a job, I think. But you've also got to be willing to play chicken. You've got to be willing to sell your house to make your movie, and you've also got to be willing to say no to a thing if you think you're not going to be the guy. And
you learned that, I think, probably around that period where you were unhappy on red carpets, walking up and down red carpets and all that. I remember that year so well. It seemed like every time I turned around, we were talking about a new movie, right? Yeah. And I didn't get the sense that you were so unhappy, because I was mostly talking to you here. Yeah. Maybe down there it was a little different, but you've learned that, and you seem to just have it inherent in you, Matt.
Well, look, I mean, I was never so blessed as to have been given 5 movies in 1 year. So I think I'm in a slightly different position. I feel grateful that I can make movies with my friends. And I think that Doug in me is like, well, I will probably always be able to work at a low enough level that I'm happy with nothing.
Yeah.
You understand? Like
have to be.
I'm not interested in having a glamorous life whatsoever. I much prefer the 1996 version of Research in Motion than the 2007.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that. I've got very few friends and I really love them, and I love Toronto. I live in this little part of town that I don't really need to leave. So it's not like I can get tempted with Jules to leave my cave. You know, I'm sitting
said.
on a real mountain. So I mean, maybe my life will change, and all of a sudden I will feel like I need to be making way more ambitious projects. But I'm lucky enough that the small films that I've made, and Blackberry is a very small film. I mean, by international standards, I mean it was in American money, it was like a $5.5 million movie. Like, this is the type of movie that's so small, most American production companies wouldn't even make it.
Right, because they're not going to make $1 billion on
Exactly.
it when it opens in theaters. Yeah.
And even though it's existing IP too, which is all that seems to matter now.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, again, I think that filmmaking, like any art, is a job that if you can have it fit your lifestyle, you really get to live like a king.
Yep, agreed.
Let's talk about the Canadianness of the film, because I've read, Matt, that you didn't want to make it earnestly Canadian in whatever that means. And I love, Jay, that you, at one point, it said, a title card comes up and it says, Windsor, Canada.
No, Waterloo,
Canada. And you're like, absolutely not. And that is a pet peeve of mine. That is when people say, oh, you're from Toronto, Canada.
Yeah,
Or
I hate
like,
it.
I'm
I hate
actually
it.
from Toronto, Ontario.
Well, there was a great joke that we were going to have Carrie Elwes do when he arrived that was really going to like burn up both Jim and Mike, which is when he doesn't know where he is. And he's like, so where are we anyway? So are we in Toronto? And is Toronto, are we in the province of Toronto right now? Like, just not knowing, and just, but it was just way too broad. And I thought nobody's going to get this outside of Canada.
Yeah.
But the idea of America, because, you know, you've been to the States, people are like, oh, all right, yeah, you're from like the province of Toronto, or like
My parents were American, right? I grew up here. My brother and I are both Canadian, but my parents were American, and my aunts and uncles would come, and they'd drive down from wherever, Kentucky or wherever they'd come. They would come down with trunks full of like peanut butter, because like, we didn't know if we could get it here or not.
You know, my grandfather on my father's side worked for the Board of Trade of Thunder Bay, and he said, I said this recently, but he said Canada's the best country in the world. We got a marketing problem, and that did you know that there are more, not adjusted for per capita, but just raw numbers, there are more visitors from Canada into the United States than the United States into Canada, and they have 10 times our population.
Yeah,
just in raw numbers.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
More Canadians visit. Yeah. And my grandfather used to say, it's because people think that when they cross the border, they're entering a different world. They thought that, oh, you can't drink on Sundays, these old puritanical rules that were just made folklore in the States. Like, people don't realize.
And they also seem to not realize the breadth, the geographic breadth of the country. A lot of people see, like, I hear a lot of Americans say, either when I'm down there or when they're up here working with me, but I hear a lot, oh, is that a Canadian thing? I say, well, it's hard to say, because the second largest land mass on Earth with 40 million people, 7 million of whom speak a language that isn't English, 7 million plus, right? So you know, I hate that. And it distills. It says that all of this is one town, and Newfoundland has nothing in common with Montreal, has nothing in common with Toronto, has nothing in common with Winnipeg, has nothing in common with Iqaluit, right? And the fact that we have to say that, right? Like, you know, even the Brits don't have to suffer that. You know, but
it's self-inflicted.
Oh no, it's all us.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
okay, good. I want to make sure.
All us. It is all us. That's what makes it so bad.
Yeah.
And this is why we inherit. I often think, because Scots built this country. We're a far more Scottish country than English. You know, and there's a great line in Trainspotting. You know, does it make you proud, when they were at Arthur's Seat or whatever? And they go, does it make you proud to be Scottish? He says, no, it's shite being Scottish. We're the most like servile race. You know, like, I don't hate the English. They're just wankers. We're the ones who got conquered by wankers, right? So that's We are kind of in that category of we do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't think about us at all. They are not Canadian-centric. Nobody is more American-centric than us. The North Koreans and the Cubans don't think about America as much as we do. Like, legit. It's embarrassing, right? And so our self-censorship coupled with our utter... So we're desperate for their approval, but we also desperately cling to our moral superiority and refuse to be them. And so this idea that like I hope they like us, but also we don't want to wave flags and fireworks and talk about that happened here, you know. And so it's this awful like of the two countries. that's the other problem. Whenever a Canadian, not whenever. But often Canadians, in trying to describe what it is to be Canadian, will say, well, we don't have guns. They will start with the negative comparison to one country. They don't compare us to the world. We don't compare ourselves to the world. We compare ourselves to one country. And let me tell you that one country never, ever, ever compares itself to us, aside from when some barbarian shoots up 30 people in broad daylight. Then they have this like fetishized NPR version.
Yeah, we're going to move to Canada. We're going to move to Canada. Yeah, they love that.
Gets elected again.
They love we're moving to Canada. I know it's so condescending, isn't it?
Yes,
it's
it is.
It's so funny.
Utterly patronizing. You know, and I've even fallen prey to it where I've even like helped put literature help point people in the ways of like the direction of proper government literature for that and stuff like. It's like you don't want to move. We just. The only time we occupy any real estate in their mind is when something awful happens there, and they hold us up as like a sort of impossible version of what they could be.
Oh yeah, look at the utopia up there.
Utter
we have no idea.
Utter
and it's why when we're making this film, we were not thinking about what it means to be Canadian. What we were thinking about is how can we really be ourselves in the film.
That's all it is.
And Jay's being himself, although it's a portrayal of another man, a living person, he really is bringing himself to that role. I clearly am being myself. And Glenn, as Jim, it was a conscious effort to cast a hardcore American who was proud about being an American to play who, in my opinion, is a businessman who is a very proud patriot. Jim Balsillie is a very proud Canadian, but he really beat the Americans at their own game.
He's an American-style guy.
Yes, by being American.
Yeah.
The joke that I tell, and it's kind of in the film, is that I think Jim Balsillie's a guy who watched Wall Street, saw Gordon Gekko, and went, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah.
He's like, I like this guy. Exactly.
He's kind of Donovan Bailey.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, every once in a while, we get our son of a bitch, we get our Douglas MacArthur, and we're psyched about it because
they come so rarely.
They come rarely, and it's nice to stick it to the big boys in the language that they understand.
Yeah. You talk about Jay bringing some of himself to the character of Mike, and I've got this quote here from you, Jay, saying that you're a square peg, you're an inconvenient man. And you feel that Mike was as well?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. I'm such an arsehole. I hate having read back to me that I said because like no matter what, no,
I'm putting these
that's
notes
not
over.
you, Richard.
Jay, that's a beautiful quote. Really?
Because I always sound like a self-important cat.
No.
And so, but yeah, the theory of the inconvenient man, for those who don't know it, is the convenient man tailors himself to suit the world, and the inconvenient man tailors the world to suit him, right? And
that was Mike to a T.
And that was Lazaridis to a T, not content to sort of play the mediocrity game and make a bunch of, crap with planned obsolescence. He wanted to make, my grandparents had one TV for my entire life, right? Yeah. And the thing worked the entire time, and they didn't have to keep on fixing it, And so he just wanted to make good because he came of age in a time with the beginning of the influx of poorly made crap. From sweatshops on the other side of the world, and I think he's nothing if not inconvenient.
Well, you're right, because his way of doing things is not great for business, and I think that's why pairing him with someone like Jim Balsillie is so important for the success of that company. Because if Mike had his druthers, I think that they would have workshopped that phone until they were like, okay, that's it. Now we can move on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, let's release this BlackBerry and move on to a new product because this one's as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, or taken so long that
It never
ultimately
hit market.
It never hits market.
Yeah.
Or the smartphone, the iPhone comes first. And,
Well, no,
and-
now that's impossible because those were all BlackBerry patents.
That's right.
So really, I mean, at some level, one of the successes of the film in my mind is that hopefully it is educating the world on the fact that Canadians did invent the smartphone.
invented the future.
Yes.
Listen,
Yes.
we're all sitting
Gutenberg
here-
Press. It's the Gutenberg
Right.
Press.
It's huge, and these guys did not realize the scope of what they had built. I think ultimately it's their downfall. I don't think Mike Lazaridis nor Jim had great vision for a cultural product. I think they were really good at solving a problem 6 feet in front of their face.
they had myopia.
Well, how would you know that you're going to change the world?
Exactly.
You know, there is no way that if this movie comes out and makes $7 billion, you're going to go, I didn't know.
No, yeah.
Well, we'd be about as shocked as anybody.
Trust me.
Yeah.
No, though that's it, and also, but then when you're sort of first at bat, your first real one is kind of proven right. It's hard to accept anything other than that.
Well, see, for me, I always think that failure is so important.
Yes.
Right? Fall down 6 times, get up 7.
Yeah.
And that 7th time is hopefully when it'll work for you because you learn something on all those first 6
And
months.
you learn humility.
And you learn humility. And that is something that Mike Lazaridis didn't
He didn't
at all.
learn. Yeah, he didn't learn.
And that was ultimately, I mean, imagine the idea that here's a guy who I read donated $170 million in 1 year to various charitable causes and then lost his company like a year and a half later, broke, zero, nothing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Now he's still. He's got money. Let's be
he
real.
figured it out.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
figured something out. So, but absolutely, and that speaks to somebody creating, using their brain like a heart, not a brain.
Right.
Kind of, and so he's using all of his intellect to create something beautiful, but it's coming from a sort of emotional, earnest place.
And he really couldn't let things go.
Right.
He was prideful. I think that more than anything, the thing that bonded him to a guy like Jim
very proud
was they
people.
both were very proud. They had so much pride that they were not willing, one, to admit when they were wrong. It's something that I think to this day they're both criticized for, and two, that they lost the sense of play that I think brought them to where they were, which allowed them to be teased, which allowed them to collaborate, which allowed them
to create, though, that's what, like, if you ever read The Artist's Way, that's what Julia Cameron says.
Absolutely.
Like,
Well, look, Jim, it's not in the film, but Jim notoriously, when he was an undergraduate student at Victoria College at U of T, was teased incessantly and teased for being a small town guy, not being in the club. And then his big breakthrough, went to school with Adam McGoyan. When he had his big breakthrough as a person is when he started making fun of himself. And then all of a sudden he got entree into the big boys club. He could do impressions of professors. He could be funny. And then people are like, okay, you know what? This guy's okay. And then as soon as he gets some success, it's almost like he forgets all that and goes back to being like, I will not be teased for any reason. I got all this success to put me above that. And
ultimately, I mean, he never went to jail, and he probably did okay at the end. But as they all did. But the game that he loves, hockey, gets made fun of by by an American thing. So he tries to buy a hockey team,
that's right.
which is ultimately, I think, what led to a lot of the
much of his downfall.
It didn't help.
Yeah, much of his downfall.
Unbelievable.
But I would argue, to the extent that anyone believes this is a thing that had to happen, what it did help was refine and make more definitive English Canada's sense of identity, I believe, because it's also, and it's going to sound an insane thing, potentially insane thing, but I would argue that it's in the same era that Trailer Park Boys comes out, and it's the same era that Goon comes out eventually, and then eventually Crazy Letterkenny, and people were allowed to make being Canadian part of their brand. Drake is allowed to do that, and
I would say I would include Rob Ford in that conversation as well.
It's sort of you're not wrong, man, and it's so it is all it is a sort of the growing pains of a juvenile country asserting itself. Mm-hmm. And even if it's to our detriment, ultimately, I think Canada is better for having Ball Silly occupied that space in the public. Because for me, with no dog in the fight, other than I want Canada to thrive and I want more hockey teams here, I was rooting for the guy.
Right.
Honest to God. And I remember hearing from a very rich American dude, oh, he's doing it the wrong way. You guys will get a team, but not with him because he's doing it the wrong way. And I was like, oh, you don't like somebody else doing it the way that you guys do it, right? Like, and so
He was supposed to come completely mendicant with his hands out.
Correct. And so, like, even if he like punched a dude, it's like this. It's like sometimes your dad gets into a fight at your like softball game, and your mom's embarrassed, but you're super psyched. Like it's that. Like my dad was a constant source of embarrassment to my mother, but to my friends and I, it was the best.
Yeah.
Because it was like, that's our guy, and no one's gonna with us. And so it's like, it is kind of a weird. I think history will be kind to that step.
So do I, and I hope we get another one.
Yes, you and me both.
Yeah, and so what do you think then that the legacy ultimately of Blackberry is? We talk about it here a little bit, but you, Jay, I read again. Here's my notes rattling. that you didn't know it was a Canadian story.
No, I knew. Oh, I knew. I
Glenn,
absolutely.
Glenn, who played Jim, had no clue.
Yeah.
He had no idea, and I find that that's actually pretty common with Americans that they don't realize the BlackBerry is a Canadian product.
Oh, I had a BlackBerry until 2 years ago.
Did you?
Yes, legit.
Look at these thumbs. I could never use one. It just never worked for me.
Yeah, I adore the thing. I adore the machine, and I think the legacy will be, well, it's hard to say. Because we are, for honorable, noble reasons, we are terrible at galvanizing or lionizing or making bronze our own history, right? And it doesn't have to have a good or bad POV to it. It's just sometimes it happened and it's worth talking about it because it happened. Mm-hmm. And we are terrible at talking about ourselves in this country. We don't want to. We really don't want to. Especially, we don't want to talk about death stuff. Right. And so I think the true legacy of BlackBerry is that it set the table for the way the people participate in the world and engage with one another in the 21st century. And you can't take them out of that. But will anybody remember that? Probably not.
Well, who knows? I mean, enough people see the film. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it's one of the reasons that we decided to make the movie the way that we did, is because we think that it's a big page in Canadian history. And I've said before publicly that I think that there is an argument for Mike and Jim being two of maybe the most influential Canadians who've ever lived, simply based on the outsized influence of the smartphone.
Yep.
Well, and you brought that to a world stage at Berlin.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm just flipping through Variety and whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm just seeing both of you all over it, and it's the hit of the Berlin Festival.
They treated us really well.
Standing ovation, Richard. It was pretty crazy. It was a lovely reception.
Yeah.
And we both thought, Glenn included, that the Germans were just not, we thought it was so idiosyncratic, and that the way the characters speak with one another, not that it's in any kind poetic or anything like that, but that it was just going to be maybe
a bit too punk rock.
Yeah, exactly. And
just dirty and fun and accessible and
maybe be taken as silly as opposed to serious.
Right.
But it was the exact opposite. Like it was really embraced.
In spite of the fact that, let me tell you, like every movie is a magic show, and for whatever the running time is, you are just trying to get people to stare here.
Yep.
Look at my hat. Don't look over here. Don't look over here. Don't look under here. Look where I'm telling you to look. So if you can keep people through 90 minutes, that's a feat. Okay?
Yeah.
So our movie's 2 hours and change. At minute like 87, 88 at the Berlinale, somebody in one of the balconies started screaming, "Emergency, emergency."
And they turned on all the lights and stopped the projector.
No.
For 20 minutes, half an hour, at minute 87, 88.
Yeah.
So all of Matt's magic show, we had kept their tension, and then all of a sudden
rabbits are jumping out of the hat.
Crazy
It
happened.
It was crazy.
This older fella had a seizure. He ultimately was fine, didn't have to go to the hospital, and now I can say, now that he's okay, I can say I'm mad that he didn't go to the hospital, because if you're going to up the movie like that, at least have the decency.
At least get medical treatment.
To get medical treatment. But we put the movie back on, and again, as soon as it came on, it had to be recalibrated. Right. So all of calibrations that him and Jared had painstakingly gone through the night before had to be quickly redone on the fly. So when it first turned on, we were all purple. Oh, God. But we got him back.
Yep.
And we got a 5-minute standing O at the end, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
In spite of that random-ass awkward interlude. Like, that is a testament to the flick and a testament to how how kindly they viewed us.
Well, it's got such great energy to it. The whole movie has this propulsive energy.
Agreed.
That keeps you going, and it grabs you from the very start.
That's what MJ does.
Well, I heard a philosophy when I was at, I think it was the Biennale in Austria, and the filmmaker was quoting another filmmaker who said, I need to. The only films I care about are the ones that grab you by the throat and never let you go.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me because I don't think that there's any other way to do it.
Yeah.
It's just the most fun.
Well, but you do it in a kind of interesting way. So it's propulsive. It feels like it's just constantly like a locomotive almost going through from the very beginning. But there's a ton of close-ups. You love close-ups, and
I'm obsessed with them.
But that means, though, what that tells me, though, is that you can keep that energy going through, but you never lose sight of the characters. We're still really in the faces of all the characters, and we're reading what's going on in their faces, what's going on behind their eyes.
That's because the actors were so good.
You never lose the characters.
Yeah.
You never lose the character in and amongst the energy of the film.
Well, what I love to do is set up a psychological problem for somebody and then watch it play out on their face. That's why I shoot in this kind of faux documentary style where at any moment my cinematographer, Jared, can just decide, okay, this is the moment, and go from a master into a close-up in half a second. Because we don't know when Jay is going to change, right? Like we're shooting Jay, and sometimes we're shooting a wide, and then he's really deciding what he's going to do with the moment. And so when all of a sudden it turns into something critical, Jared just goes right in and
combat photography.
Literally, it's a mix between that. Like we want to make it like a D.A. Pennebaker style mixed with National Geographic animal photography.
Yeah. Wow.
That
big
is,
lenses. You should see the lenses. And we never knew where the cameras were. That's the other cool thing.
Oh.
He would shoot us from 2 rooms over, like way far, through a bookshelf and so super long lens, camouflage, so then we are just kind of creating.
Yeah.
We're not hamming, we're not tailoring anything, we are just doing it, and he's capturing it.
And very little rehearsal, I imagine,
Zero.
just to make that work.
No, zero.
Just shoot everything.
The most that we would rehearse is Jay was really, really great at finding a kind of discipline for us to just run lines beforehand because he really has a professional background in that. And so him and Glenn specifically would have ways of just kind of figuring out the words, but the words in some ways were kind of unimportant. Like once we had the flow, these guys could just go.
Yeah.
And then we would just shoot. We would basically shoot until everybody was tired. And normally that was only about 4 or 5 takes.
Yeah. Well, it really works. Congratulations on
Thank
it.
you.
That was so much fun talking to you, Richard.
Such a cool movie,
Appreciate
and
that.
I'm so happy for. But like when I was starting to read the stuff out of Berlin, I was just like, dudes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I'm just so happy for you both.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Very nice of you, Richard. Thank you so much for the kind words. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a huge honor.
Oh, listen. This was easy for me. I didn't really have to do anything. Just
Right.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
Okay, picture a cell phone and an email machine all in one thing. There is a free wireless internet signal all across North America, and nobody has figured out how to use it. It's like the Force. Sorry, have you seen Star Wars?
No.
That guy is sketchy.
I don't think he's sketchy.
The guy's a shark.
I know how to market it, and I know who we can sell it to. But I want 50% of the company, and I've got to be CEO.
I don't know who you think you are, but deal.
That was so much fun. That was Matt Johnson and Jay Baruchel from the movie Blackberry. A big thanks to those guys. Also, a big thanks to you for listening.
Try typing with your thumbs.
It's called a Blackberry.
I'm Richard Krause. Thanks for listening to Maple Syrup for Your Eyes. If you liked the show, and I sure hope you did, I hope that you'll like and subscribe. We'll see you again next time with more great conversation about great Canadian movies.